Hey everyone, welcome to My Two Cents with Tawanda Harris. This is a podcast dedicated to educators, for educators, and by educators. Yes, it's all about encouraging, it's all about sharing strategies, it's all about going on an educational journey with each other. You are not alone, and I hope that when you finish listening to this podcast, you feel like you went on a journey with educators around the world. Thank you for tuning in to My Two Cents.
Yeah, I think that it's always so beautiful to listen to Cornelius kind of like talk about his stance on, that really is part of Corn's stance on literacy, right? And I think about, the state of literacy. Tawanda and I were talking about that a little bit. And it's interesting. I think part of our roles as teachers is to really help all kids know that like reading is for you. Reading is for everyone. I don't care if your family has 0 books in your home. Reading is for you.
Yeah.
I of course grew up very differently than Corn, but like reading for us was like, we weren't like at a survival state, but it was definitely a mechanism like to make our lives better. And I mean in very technical ways. Like I remember going to the library with my dad to check out like plumbing manuals because we never like paid for any work in our house. We did everything on our own. Like I remember like my mom's like cookbooks were like her most treasured items. And so I think about like reading in our home was like a means to gain the information and knowledge we needed because nobody in my family like did university or anything like that. And so it's interesting to think about how reading made such an impression on us in these different ways. But then you go to school, right? And then children are being taught these like super like explicit and like strange ways of reading that don't make any sense when it comes to thinking about what reading means to essentially like change your life. And for us, like when I think about when teaching works in terms of literacy instruction, like of course you have to understand like balanced literacy and you need to know like the foundations of teaching reading. But moreover, you need to understand why you are teaching children to read and what is it you stand for. And so like that conviction around literacy, like your stance on literacy is so real. And I would love to see that growing more in school communities as opposed to sort of like what is like the strategic lesson that I'm going to give a kid so I can ensure that they're able to identify like the structure of this text on the test.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And we've used reading to really navigate our reality here. And so as Brooklyn started to gentrify, like that was an opportunity to read with children. Like, here's why these rich people live on your block right now. And here's why that store that you used to go to where you could afford the vegetables got replaced by a Whole Foods where you cannot afford the vegetables. Mm-hmm. And so here's why you feel angry, but you can't put your finger on it. All of those are radical acts of literacy, like that understanding, right? And so for us, like, as we, look on how Brooklyn has changed in the last 20 years, like for me, all that has been literacy. Like I want to help kids understand why that is. And I want to help kids understand where their place is. And I want to help kids understand like where your voice can live now that all of these things have been taken from us, like where you can salvage autonomy, where you can salvage freedom and sovereignty, like all of those things are acts of literacy, And so when I think about, I can teach you this reading strategy that has no tether to your world, or I can teach you this reading strategy and then tie it to the outcomes that you want for your life and for your little brother and for your auntie and for your grandma. That's powerful,
Yeah.
So
I did a session with the brilliant Isla Tawheed, aka Izzy.
BX in the house.
We did
one. We teach at the same school, just FYI.
Yeah.
Oh, she's so awesome. So we did a session and we'll actually be presenting at NCTE the same session, but it was environmental justice. We talked about environmental justice and the student work that she showed in that session. It was just absolutely amazing. But to your point, Cornelius, just really helping students to understand how literacy directly connects to the changes that are happening in your community. And then also, how do we then take literacy and use it as a vehicle to advocate for ourselves against, things that maybe we are not being treated fairly, or that, things that we don't have, that access piece is important. And I think that's really, really powerful, that we can help students to see, this is why, this is what this means for me and my family, that it's not just I'm at school doing this and completing this, but I am doing this at school, and this is how it's going to help to connect me with my community as well as my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what feels best for kids always. When they
Oh,
can make those connections, it's like that's gold.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we talked a lot about like where, students kind of fit in this beautiful picture of creating better humans. I mean, it's not just about, okay, the adults versus the students in this one space. How are we going to work together to then, better the world or better the community, and literacy being that vehicle? But I'm a teacher, figuratively speaking. I'm a teacher that doesn't know how to do this work. I don't know if I'm on the right track. What are some great markers that will help a teacher to know that they're headed in the right direction, some places where they can kind of hold themselves accountable and stop and reflect on this path? Of course, it's ever, it doesn't end, but what would you say to them?
I'm gonna just say two things to begin with. I think if you wake up in the morning and you know why you're going to work, that's really, really important. I think that building your stance and your philosophy, like that can take you very, very far in your work. It can provide you with that juice and energy that you're not getting from any other source. And then the other thing I will say, whenever I'm feeling funny about whatever I'm teaching, and I don't know if this is going well, I'm a big fan of just like, what is your participation looking like? And if you only have like one way to kind of like think about how your kids are participating, then that's a good time for you to kind of like, recollect how you think about participation. And I literally just came up with this theory with the teacher today based on sort of like flipping a metric data point, right? So we were in a math classroom. There was a visual on the smartboard, and kids were like grouping together numbers. And if you looked on her classroom, floor rug, kids were like laying down. Some kids were in their chairs. They were like stretching out. They're all over the place. But let me tell you, kids were like raising their hand. They were talking to their partner. They were asking like, who are these weird, me and Cornelius were in the room. We don't work at the school all the time. So like, who are these people? So the kids have like agency and asking the questions. And so it's literally like, okay, so now we have this idea. When kids are able to move their bodies, when they learn math, they are able to have more robust conversations. So something as simple as that, like really just taking note of what's happening when kids are participating a lot. What do you think participation is? And then really checking yourself, like, how am I making my kids just raise their hand all the time? What are all of my options? I think kids just have to have opportunities to generate some kind of thinking somehow, some way. And we just need to kind of like, I think oftentimes open up our minds and what that looks like. And I think that's a really great starting point for anybody, but especially teachers who are feeling fuzzy about stuff. Like that is like a really great entry point to any kind of work, and doing that work of, what did you say, Tawanda? Bettering humans, bettering community. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I echo Kass, same thing. Like every morning you have to know why you're getting out of bed. Like that like, getting out of bed to collect a paycheck is a pathway to depression, right? And so we have to know like what we're doing, and so I'm always thinking about, what is it that I want to accomplish in the world, and how can I find space to do that in a classroom today, right? And and that's a real thing that I grapple with. Like I really think I'm like, okay, here's this big thing that I want in the world, and so if I believe in peace, if I believe in justice, if I believe in love, then what can it look like in third period? I can't revolutionize everything, but for 50 minutes I can walk a little bit closer to justice. I can walk a little bit closer to love. And so for me, I think a lot about what that means in a very practical, hands-on kind of way is, historically, when people think about their teaching, they think about performance. So I am going to perform this thing, this math lesson. I'm going to perform this language arts lesson. And so people get really caught up in the performance. And if you ask them, did you have a good day? Their metric for if I had a good day was, did I get through my performance uninterrupted? That's their metric, right? And so I am wanting to grow people out of thinking about teaching as a performance and rather thinking about it as a dialogue, right? Because if I am performing, that ain't got nothing to do with the student, right? If I go and perform and my metric for if I had a good day is, did I get through my performance uninterrupted? That does not at all measure how people received it, right? And so I'm trying to move from monologue to dialogue. Like I'm trying to see like how it is, like, not am I performing, but am I able to read what students are communicating to me in all of the different ways that they communicate it, right? We know that behavior is communication. We know that spoken words are communication. We know that facial expressions are communication. So in all of these inputs, am I able to read where students are, what they need, how they're feeling? And am I able to act on that in improvisational ways, right? And we know that improvisation is not anarchy, right? People hear that word improvisation, and improvisation is very disciplined, right? Improvisation. So I think about Miles Davis and that album Kind of Blue, right? Like that is the world's greatest improvised album. Miles Davis knows his music better than anybody on the planet, but he knows it so well that he's able to respond to the context of the moment, right? That's improvisation. So I know my language arts so well, I know my math so well, I know my science so well that I'm able to respond to the stimulus of the moment, right? I'm able to respond to the humans in this moment. And really, you know you're on the right path when you're moving in that direction, when it is less performance, more dialogue. But here's the thing that I've learned from Kass, that kind of work is a little bit more difficult. It's trickier, right? And one of the things, and I think the greatest lie the devil ever told to the education industry, and I'm using the word industry on purpose, not profession, but the greatest lie the devil ever told to the education industry is that I'm gonna sell you this thing that's gonna make it easier. Oh. Right? You know, right? And we know that good teaching ain't about easy, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to complicate people's understanding of children. And so that's going to make the work harder, right? And so what ends up happening, we're in this era in the industry, and I always separate, because there's education, the profession, right? And then there's education, the industry. So the profession is us learning together, us thinking together, us working to be better for students. But then this industry just want to sell us a bunch of stuff, right? This industry just want to test our kids all over the place. This industry just wants to sort and segregate people, right? And so I really think about, how can we help our peers to mature to the point where they're not looking for easy, but for where they're looking for to really kind of like see the complexity of a kid, right? And that ain't sexy right now, right? Yeah. You know, like everybody want to buy the 3-step thing off of Teachers Pay Teachers is plagiarized anyway, right? Like, and so
we don't have enough time right now for me to get on my soapbox.
Open Pandora's box.
Because I'm sitting here like, okay, don't chase that rabbit, Twanda. You can't chase that rabbit. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you're right. And the problem is when we think we have this package program that's going to fix, air quotes, fix our students, when it doesn't work, then it becomes, oh, there's something wrong with our students.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it was never meant for them in the first place. So that's where the breakdown was. That wasn't the best thing to use with that student, and that's okay. But like you all said, when you wake up in the morning, you have to say, this is my purpose, because this is a profession that you have to roll up your sleeves and just get whatever comes to you, just like as a parent. Whatever comes when you're trying to get out the house to an appointment and someone spills the cereal in the back of your car on your way to this appointment that you can't be late to, and you're sitting there like, all right, okay, I got napkins in the back, I need to do this. And when I get from this appointment, you start problem solving on the fly. And as teachers, that's what we have to do. We are really being responsive to what is being thrown our way, but that's life. Yeah. So this is, oh my goodness, this is so great. This is so great. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Go ahead.
No, I'm just smiling at you.
This is such a great conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could of course be here for another 5 hours. But we're going to, maybe we'll have like a part 2 or a part 3, or pick it up like we never left.
Anything for you.
Yep.
Whatever
It's
you
like
need.
family. We don't have to be together every day, but when we come together,
Right.
it's like we never skip the beat.
Yes.
All right, so let's end with the famous rapid fire questions. All right. So I'm going to ask you some fun questions about you. You can choose to expound on it, or you can just give me one word answers, whatever you prefer. So let's start with the first. What is your favorite ice cream flavor or your favorite sweet treat?
Mine is gummy bears. Like every night without fail at 8:30, I leave the apartment and walk across the street to the bodega and I buy a pack of gummy bears. Like that's
Right.
me.
True story.
What brand?
So Haribo, the German brand. Yeah, like and I'm real bougie.
Not like this is a whole podcast in and of itself. Okay. Gummy bear brands. We were just talking about this last night. It's funny.
Yeah, like I'm very bougie with the gummy bears. So you can keep that 99-cent stuff. I don't do that. I don't do that. So like my gummy bear budget is pretty severe.
There's actually like there's an Albanian brand of gummy bears. It's like I can't remember the name of it, but they have them in some stores and they're very delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I come to New York, that is on my things to do list.
Every night at 8:30, I put the kids to bed. I tell Cass goodbye. I walk across the street.
Gummy bear journey.
And I get gummy bears.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Cass.
So I'm the kind of person that likes to try something different every time I go to the store. Like we can go to the same restaurant every single Friday and I'll have something different on the menu every single Friday. I'm the same with all things, with ice cream, desserts, all that. Like, so I love ice cream, but I definitely don't have like a one flavor I could choose.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty boring. I'm not a daring. I'll hang with you and then you'll like pull me out of my
Oh yeah, well you and Corn can
after my gummy bears, and then I'll try something new, I promise. Okay. So what is your favorite your favorite childhood book that you most remember? And it doesn't have to be a childhood book, but just that book that you remember as a child.
I've been thinking about this. So I've been teaching some undergrad teachers like how to teach kids to read. And so I've been thinking about my early readers. I had this book called Jillian Jiggs that it was like my first book that I could read on my own. And I could literally, it was like, Jillian Jiggs, your room looks like it has been lived in by pigs. Like I can literally recite this book, but I used to like carry that book around and read it to whomever would pretend to listen. So that's my most memorable childhood book.
Yeah. And I got two of them, like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, Mildred Taylor, 4th grade. That book changed everything for me. It was really the first time that I saw like an accurate depiction of what like Black folks been through, and I'm from round about you, Tawanda. I'm from Atlanta. So like, so really reading that book in the context of Atlanta in the 1980s as a bougie Black child, like was a lot of layers, right? Because we were like, my parents were like highly educated, like working people, like we're immigrants, right? But we're in this community of like working class white folks, right? And so here's me and my bougie Black self around all these working class white folks. So in Atlanta, that don't mix, right? And so so reading Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry was like a major. And then I had a librarian. To this day, the most influential educator in my life was my high school librarian. Again, I wasn't built for classrooms, but she used to get me books. And so she got me a copy of The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin in 10th grade.
Oh, wow.
And it changed everything for me. Like yeah. And so those two books are kind of my childhood pillars. Like that everything that I have done in life has been dictated by those two books.
Wow. Yeah, those are good books. Okay, so last question.
Yeah.
If you weren't an educator, what would you be?
Easy. I would be a designer. I would
Oh, I
love
can
to
see it.
just
First off, you have the best earrings. Let me just pause and say the jewelry. Yeah, I'm like, no, no, Tawanda, you can't. Yeah,
it's so
your
fun.
jewelry game is on point. But okay, I digress.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I appreciate that. I started, my mom always sewed all of her clothes and she was like a fashion icon for me. And so I started sewing at a pretty young age, like in early middle school. And so then I started college as like a fashion design major. And then I took like a sociology course, and one thing led to another. And the next thing you know it, I was like worried about the world in ways that I didn't feel like a career and it's essentially capitalist industry. And I was like, that's not for me. So now it's fun because I do like my learning and education thing, and there's so many intersections between creating and designing, and it's very low pressure. Like I do a little bit of design work here and there with jewelry, and it just feels good. So yeah.
And if I weren't a teacher, and I know this sounds silly, I would be a full-time dad, like straight up.
Stay
Like
on that.
there is nothing better than being a Black daddy, like straight up. Like I love it more than, every morning I ride my kids on the bike to school. I drop them off, we love them up, and I go pick them up on the bike. We ride back home, like there is just nothing better. Like last week, Cass was out of town. And Cass was all worried. I was like, I'm having a ball. I'm good.
Like, I don't know
Oh, I
about
was
you,
a
but
mess.
me.
I was a mess.
And Cass was like, how the kids? I'm like, don't ask me how the kids. We good. like, but I would look, I would be a full-time Black daddy.
Wow.
That's a whole nother podcast, Tawanda. Like this new life that we are all living without traveling, all this here, like it's amazing.
And Tawanda, that's real. Like I was on the road for 2 weeks a month for the last decade. So since my children have been alive, I have not been home for 30 days straight, ever.
Oh my God.
Since my children have been alive. And so when the pandemic hit, was my first time ever at home for a month.
Oh my
ever goodness. In the life of my children. And so I had a year and a half where I ain't go nowhere. Not one single airplane. Now, and I talk to you all the time in airports, right? Because I was always in and out of flights. And so to be home for a year and a half and to make every meal and to drop off and pick up and to be there for every swim practice and for every soccer practice and for every tennis practice, that was some radical shit for me. Yeah. And so like I loved it. And so right now, Cass doing all the traveling. I ain't going nowhere.
I'm doing very minimal traveling, just putting it out there so people don't feel some kind of way about it.
But like, and so without question, I would be a full-time Black daddy.
Yeah, it's funny. Kaz and I, we were talking about just our children and their concern for us as a business person. I said, my children could care less about my consulting company. They're like, listen, did you make breakfast? And and it's funny, like the little small things. My daughter last night, she discovered, I know this is horrible when I say it out loud, the French string beans. Well, I was like roasting them in the oven because I have a goal of doing a new, this is week 1, so I can't take credit just yet, but doing a new vegetable each week, right?
Okay.
And so I started to marinate these French string beans, right? And so she's like, I want to help. Okay, go ahead and put some balsamic vinegar, some salt and pepper and all of that. And she got a taste of one, and she's sitting there just crunching on them. She goes, I don't know if I'm hungry, but let me tell you about these string beans. This is life right here. This is her. String beans, like this is life. And so anyone that knows my daughter, how animated she is, but now she's like, okay, I need these for my lunch every single day. And it was funny because I have the little snack bags and I'm putting them in there, and it's joyous, just to have these moments, because when they go away to college or when they go and they leave the home, whatever it is their next chapter of their life, you're just sitting there like, can you just come back so I can fuss? I fuss and I love. I am that Black mama. I'm sorry.
I'm the same. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this has been so great. I thank you so much for, you all taking time to just be in conversation and just to talk about just what's best for students, different things that educators can do. I know we do not have a manual on how to do this work. We know that it's messy. We know that once we get it right, then we have a new set of students that will come through our door, and we have to scrap whatever it is that we got, because they're human beings, and we all come in different shapes, different sizes, different, behaviors and different things that excite us, and that's okay. And so I just thank you for just the nuggets that you all have dropped today. So before we go, where can folks just find out more about what you all are doing, or if there are any upcoming events that you want to share with the listeners?
Sure. Well, you can find us. So we have our website at kassandcorn.com. So you could see sort of like our joint presence. Both Cornelius and I are pretty active on social media, Twitter primarily. So I'm at Miss Cass1, Corn
And I'm Mr. Minor, MISTER MINOR. Yeah.
Okay. That's right. Yeah. Well, we are going to have some exciting projects, sort of like yet to be named and formally announced upcoming, but be on the lookout. Maybe within the next month, you'll hear some news about some new projects.
There's a lot of good stuff. I have a course out on the Heinemann platform right now. So if people want to take a self-guided asynchronous course, for a lot of teachers, PD looks different right now. So you can sign up for that. Kass and I are all over the world virtually. So if we are not in a town near you, we're at a conference that you can log on to. We do about 1 or 2 big events every month. And so just kind of look for us, but also reach out. Like, I think the thing that I am proudest of is that Kass and I were raised in a community, right? That everything that we know because there were educators who sat us down and supported us, through difficulty, through hardship, through joy, through laughter. And so we try to be that. And so when people reach out to us, we really try to mirror that kind of behavior. And so when you reach out to us, let us know how you're doing. We hit you back up. We're real people, all that stuff. So
yes.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, if you're not following either of the two, listen, I get a joy out of just seeing your family pictures and just the different places and the bike rides and all of that. It just fills my heart with joy. So I appreciate what you all are doing as a family unit out in the education world and your community, and just the model that you are for your children. So thank you. That is all. My listeners, thank you so much for being a part of or listening to this episode, and happy teaching.
All right.